Adoration can take several forms, and two Renaissance paintings depict the many ways we can give thanks to God for the birth of Christ. It's all part of the artwork that leads us to appreciate the beauty of faith. Joining us now is Jem Sullivan, author of The Beauty of Faith, to discuss these two paintings. So, Jem, let's take a look at them one by one. First, we'll start with the Adoration of the Magi by the Italian painters Fra Angelico and Fra Filippo Lippi. Tell me a little bit about this one.
Sure. This painting was once owned by the Medicis of Florence. An inventory taken of the Medici family estate in 1492 listed this painting as one of their most valuable possessions. The Medicis were the wealthy, noble family of Florence who commissioned some of the greatest artists of the Renaissance. The scene is like a visual summary of how the people of Florence would celebrate the Feast of Epiphany. They would have an elaborate procession that went through the town streets, and it was a reenactment of the three wise men bringing their gifts to the baby Jesus. And that's exactly what we see in this beautiful, exquisite painting. A large crowd of people making their way through the town, and they're dressed up in all kinds of festive clothing. But then in the midst of all that hustle and bustle, a quiet pause as one of the three wise men, the three kings, kneels before the baby Jesus in adoration and worship.
It's interesting because oftentimes artists will paint a certain symbol or an animal to represent a theme, and so above the barn we can see a peacock. What does the peacock mean?
Sure. This goes back to ancient Christian art, actually. The peacock was a symbol of immortality, of eternal life. So even as we see the beautiful young baby Jesus, newborn baby Jesus, we are reminded that he comes to bring us eternal life. That is his mission, his identity as the Son of God, is to lead us to eternal life, to immortal life with God.
Absolutely fascinating. Our second painting now, I want to talk about this, is the Adoration of the Shepherds by Italian artist Giorgione. We see in it two shepherds kneeling in front of the baby Jesus. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Sure. You know, Florence was the birthplace of the Italian Renaissance, but the city of Venice was another place in Italy where the arts flourished in the 15th and 16th century. This painting by Giorgione is from that tradition, the Venetian school, and captures that beautiful moment when the shepherds come to adore the baby Jesus. You know, the shepherds were one of the first to hear the good news of the message of Christ, God coming into the world, coming as one among us. And here we see both of them kneeling before, coming in adoration before the baby Jesus. Notice that their clothes are torn and tattered. They're poor, they're humble, but they are rich in faith because they have recognized that this is the Messiah, the one sent by God, who is the light of the world. The painting is really all about light because you see the baby Jesus, he's on the floor, literally on the ground. He's radiating light. The Venetian artists would actually grind precious and semi-precious stones into their paintings. And so that when the paint dried on the canvas, the shimmering light radiated from the scene. And that's exactly what we're being invited to come before Christ, who is the light of the world.
Such an important message. What is it about these artists that you think was so interested in the adoration specifically?
Sure, you know, the whole theme of Christmas is to recognize that God has come among us. And our human response, the most appropriate human response, is praise, adoration, worship, and thanksgiving to God. So I think this is what these artists are really reminding us, that while we celebrate the feast of Christmas, our response is one of praise and adoration.
Such an important message and something to pray on as we celebrate the Advent season. Jem Sullivan, author of The Beauty of Faith, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you, Wyatt.